Hey everyone, thank you again for coming to my YouTube channel to check out today's video. Today we're going to talk about personal loans and how they're handled in a divorce case. Now, I like to focus on a lot of my videos and even my blog posts on what I find contradictions, things that people tend to believe, usually tend to make favors in their and mistakes in their favor, right? So the reason I'm talking about this issue is because the general consensus is it's in my name, so it must be my problem. And then, of course, if it's to your favor, when it's not in your name, when I'm representing the other side, they say, well, that's in their name, so they keep that. Oh, by the way, the cars are in my name, so I keep both cars. It doesn't work that way. It's based on what we call equitable distribution, which I'm going to explain why equitable distribution doesn't mean 50-50. Now, the issue is what happens when we're at the time of divorce and there's this personal loan. How are we going to treat this personal loan if it's premarital or if it's postmarital? Well, it's very simple. We go back to contract law, right? You apply for a credit card and you apply for it in your name. Guess what? It's your debt, right? No one's going to argue this. Everybody knows this already. But once you step into this territory, into family court, that kind of changes everything now. It's still your debt, but there's marital debt, and that's what we're going to have to focus on. So here's a quick and easy way to figure this out. If you have a credit card in your name that you got during the marriage and you owe $10,000 on that credit card, $5,000 belongs to your other spouse. It's that simple. Now, what if there's debt that you had that was $1,000 when you entered the marriage? So we're only at 1 grand. Now you're getting divorced and you owe 10 grand. How do we handle that? Well, right here, there's a $9,000 difference. Guess what? That gets divided into two. That's why equitable does not mean equal. It would not make sense that you owe debt before the marriage and then your spouse is now responsible for that debt as well. On the flip side, it wouldn't make sense that you have an IRA account that you've been pumping money into for 20 years. It's got 1 million now, and then all of a sudden at divorce, where it only went up $10,000. Let's say you were divorced, married a short period of time. All of a sudden, your partner would get half of that. That's what people say though. Well, I get half. No, you don't. You get what's equitable. Granted, the longer you're together, the more things are going to be close to half. But if you had assets and debt before the marriage, it's not going to be half. It makes no sense. So a lot of times, there's debt in your name or even assets because you have better credit. So suppose like a car payment. If your spouse has good credit and they're going to get a better credit, interest rate and everything else, it's common to have both cars in their name. And so what happens at divorce? They're going to say both cars in my name. I keep both cars. You get none. What do you get? The bicycle? That doesn't make any sense. So again, it's based on what is equitable. And since these are assets that were attained during the marriage, guess what? You're both going to walk out with a car. That's the way it works. So the problem is people, again, are focusing, especially community property states. I've taught law for California for 4.5 years, so I'm well aware of community property states. And people say they're the same thing. It's half. I live in a community property state. Okay, so the $1 million house I had before I met you that went from $1 million paid for in equity. We got married, got divorced 6 months later. You're going to walk out with half a million in equity? No, it's not going to happen. Now, community property states use different terminology, but in reality, if you look at the law of community property states and equitable distribution states, I think there's 11 community property states. The rest are equitable. It's the same basic legal theories where we're talking about just what is equitable. It would not be equitable, and there's rules of reimbursement and all that. Basically, whatever you brought into the marriage, you'll get back. So if you put down $10,000 as a deposit for the home, you'll get that back at the time of divorce. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be half. It's not going to be half at a community property state. It's not going to be half in an equitable distribution state like Florida, where I'm at, and all the rest of the states. So keep that in mind. So again, if we're at 1K and it goes up to 10K, the 9K gets split between both parties. So we'll just put husband and wife here. That'll get split between both parties. That is equitable. It's not equal, is it? Now change this and make this real estate instead. Instead of making it 100, make it 100,000, and now the house is worth 1 million. Same thing. It would not be equitable that you get the initial $100,000 in equity. Let's say it's $100,000 that I put down. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about these issues of how dividing in debt. I understand that when you applied for the credit card, it was solely in your name. But if that credit card increased in debt, increased in the balance during the marriage, then that balance should be split normally equal. Why? The theory is simple. Somehow you and your spouse received a benefit from that credit card. So let's put it to you this way: I owe $1,000, and then we've been traveling, whatever, and we bought a TV, and all of a sudden, 10 years later, it's at $10,000 number. The relationship didn't receive a benefit from this. Didn't we travel? Buy it. We both traveled, right? We both used the television. We both enjoyed it. That is what's being equitable. So forget the 50-50 thing and focus on what is equitable distribution. Now, granted, if it's during the marriage, it's going to be 50-50. We got into debt during the marriage. So when it comes to these personal loans, keep that in mind. When did you get the personal loan? Is it premarital? Did it increase in debt? Were you paying that off and then other debts increased? Okay, then the other debts that increase, again, that is subject to equitable distribution, and that increase would be split 50-50 because it's equitable, not because it's equal. All right. Any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me. If your question is posted, if I accept your question, it'll be posted in the Reader's Question Forum, and I'll make a blog post out of it. And of course, for the students at whatever universities you're using my textbook, continue using the blog as a way to supplement the material. I've always said go outside the four corners of the textbook, because that's the best way to learn. The textbook provides you plenty of information, but sometimes we all think differently and learn differently. So use outside sources. My blog is a great way to explain all these issues of equity, exemptions, and everything else. All right. For everyone else, not paralegal students, right? For the rest of you that I'm talking to, join me on social media. And of course, if you like my YouTube videos and my channel, feel free to subscribe. And any questions, feel to post them down there below. You'll see a little arrow there now pop up. Feel free to post there and I'll respond to you directly. All right, everyone. So until my next video, take care, be safe, and I'll see you next time around, hopefully tomorrow. Bye bye.